Welcome to the Power Lunch, a special edition on Friday lunchtime. This is a real pleasure to be here today with you. And I'm Rhett Power, your host. We normally do this program 4 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and most Fridays around 12 noon. If the technology gods let us get the program on for you. And today they did, so thankfully we're going to have a great conversation this afternoon. The point of the show is to bring you today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, CEOs, corporate leaders, people who are doing interesting things in the world, so that we can learn from their work and their success, their secrets, things that they do to help make them great. We want to learn from them. So this is why we do this. Now, the fun part of the show is that it's interactive. So if you have questions for our audience, or for our guest, please ask, because that's how we learn. That's how we all get better. And we want that engagement. That's one of the reasons why we do this. Now, we are simulcasting on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, so you can interact on any of those platforms. Now, if you love or like the program, either one, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit from the program. You can follow the program at hashtag PowerLunchLive on LinkedIn or the LinkedIn Live hashtag. Those both get you to where we're broadcasting. Now, my promise to you is to bring the best. Today, I have Ben Angel. Ben is Australia's #1 branding and influence specialist. He's a personal development expert. He's the author, a best-selling author of Unstoppable, Flee 9 to 5, and Click. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on it.
Yeah, well, hey, man, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're in the path of this hurricane coming down to Florida, and so yeah. I know your time is valuable, so thank you so much.
I'm watching out the window right now.
It's cooperating for the time being, right?
Yeah.
Not going to come ashore in the next hour. Thank you. Hey, man, there were so many things I wanted to ask you and talk about. And, you've been out there for a long time. And what's something that we don't know about you? I mean, because you tell a lot about yourself and you reveal a lot about yourself. But what's something unique about you that most people don't know?
A lot of people don't realize that I grew up on a cattle farm.
Really?
Yeah, not many people actually know that, but I grew up on a cattle farm about an hour and a half out of Adelaide in South Australia. So it was cattle, also wheat and cropping, a very large farm, but that was farm boy upbringing, one of the best upbringings that I think anyone can have. And I think it set me up really well for success in the future in terms of what we learned growing up on a farm, going through 7 years of drought with no rain, how to kind of fight your way through that and still survive in the end. So that's one thing that people don't always know.
So you think that really helped shape kind of who you are? I mean, and your work ethic and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think especially growing up, we had to work all of this expensive farm machinery, even from the age of probably 12 or 13. The laws were obviously very different back then. But it also meant, because we did go through a severe drought at one point, we had to fix all of our own farm machinery too. So we had to be incredibly self-sufficient, but it was also the community culture around farming. If another farmer was struggling, then our family would offer support, or vice versa. And I think especially in business, growing up on a farm really forces you to grow up very quickly to a large degree, but also remain really humble through the challenges that you experience.
Now, that's interesting. I do believe that. I grew up in the country, not on a farm, but I do believe that it's certainly having to work for everything you got, and everything was really a valuable lesson, and that I think certainly is made me who I am. What you talk about, I want to really get into Unstoppable today, because I think it offers valuable lessons for people that are struggling. What you talk about really going through this period of time of debilitating fatigue and depression, and how did you how'd you come out of that, and what inspired you to sort of go on this? You went on this 90-day journey, right, to discover why you were going through this, or the root of it, I guess, and or if that's accurate. But how did you come out of that period and go down the path that you ultimately went down?
Well, when I started experiencing the depression and the fatigue, and when I say fatigue, it wasn't just sleep it off, you'll feel better in a couple of hours. It was needing to sleep 3 to 4 times during the day because my brain just wasn't functioning like it should. But a lot of people they ask the question, well, why did you let yourself go during that period of time? And the truth was that I didn't. I just traveled around the US and Canada for 3 months, my first real holiday as an adult. Got back to Australia and I started having all these symptoms. I was working out 6 days a week, doing a CrossFit program, working with a PT, also eating a meal plan by a nutritionist, only having 1 cheat meal per week, incredibly strict diet to make sure that everything I was doing was right. And yet I started getting hit with all these symptoms really suddenly. And it went on for a couple of years. And then in March 2017, I really hit breaking point and thought, I'm not getting help from doctors. I've seen 6, 7+ doctors now. All they say is you look fit and healthy, which I did, but I certainly didn't feel that way. So I came up with a crazy idea to try and solve these problems. And at the time, I don't think I really thought I had legs. I wasn't sure if it was going to go anywhere, but I thought, hey, I'm going to try it. So I pitched to Entrepreneur Magazine. So I've got this book idea around me biohacking my way back to health. What do you think of it? I'll go on this journey, travel, meet biohackers, different doctors, interview them to really uncover the root cause. Now, they took a pretty big risk because I said to them, I don't know what the outcome is because I don't know if I'm going to get an answer.
Right.
And they said, okay, we'll go. We're willing to go on this journey with you anyway. And through doing the book, I really entered into the biohacking movement to see what people like Dave Asprey, the founder of Bulletproof Coffee, was doing, spoke with neuroscientists, trialed wearable devices that had been funded by the Pentagon, and also functional doctors, nutritionists, clinical social workers. And it really forced me to look at self-help in a different way, because I had worked in the self-help industry for almost 15 years, written books on it. But through this journey in writing Unstoppable, it's made me stop and question how helpful is some of the self-help advice. And part of the book was to pose this question, which is, what would happen to a peak performer if you were to give them a vitamin D deficiency, a magnesium deficiency, expose them to toxins or other triggers? And the truth is, based on the research that we have, is they would potentially become depressed, anxious, they would withdraw, and they would be able to keep up what they're doing for a little period of time due to the psychological strength that they already had. But after a while, once that willpower runs out and the brain isn't functioning properly with brain fog, fatigue, loss of memory, they're essentially going to dip in their energy levels and not function like they used to. So a lot of the self-help advice that I find, it works phenomenally well for those people that have a high functioning brain. But we surveyed over 21,000 people and found that over 76% of people have brain fog. 76%. So brain fog is just really not being able to think clearly, string your sentences together. It could be associated with fatigue as well. So there's 76% of people that are getting told advice like quit making excuses, which is really treating the symptom and not the underlying cause.
Right. What do you, I mean, that's alarming, because that means, I mean, that means that most people are going through this at some point in their life, right?
Yeah, we found the other results from the survey, we found that over 50% of people are really struggling with energy levels, the brain fog, procrastination, as well as digestive issues. And more research comes out every single week around the connection between our gut microbiome and our mental health. And in fact, in China, they've created what are called psychobiotics. So instead of a typical probiotic, which gives you all of the different bacteria. A psychobiotic focuses in on specific strains of bacteria that can assist with mental health, specifically depression. And in this psychobiotic, they've also found incredible results with children with autism.
Wow.
So we can often, what I find in the self-help industry, we misdiagnose these problems as a poor mental attitude, or you just need to toughen up and get on with it. So we're medicating with self-help. While some of us may get better, we may not get well. So we'll get a quick injection of motivation, but we always default to that biochemical set point. So if you're exposed to nutritional deficiencies, poor gut health, or other toxins, you're always going to default back to that. Willpower will get you through for a little while, but the reality is willpower requires a tremendous amount of energy to keep up, and that's going to deplete you even further.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And we always use that as an excuse. And I want to ask you a question about willpower in a minute. I'm curious about this topic of biohacking, because we hear a lot about it, and I don't think it's very well understood yet. Yeah. What is it, and where do you even go if after this program you say, okay, this is intriguing, and I know we want to read your book and stuff as a place to start, but I mean, what is it?
So biohacking is basically the science and art of optimizing your body and mind for peak performance. Okay. Now, a lot of people, biohacking is very misunderstood because it's kind of becoming a massive wave and a massive trend in the last couple of years. And I certainly attribute this to Dave Asprey at Bulletproof Coffee. Right. But a lot of people tend to think it's pseudoscience, so they'll immediately dismiss it. The truth is, with biohacking and with any of the wearable technology that I trialed out, the nootropics, all of these companies have medical advisory boards, some of which include individuals from Harvard, neuroscientists, key doctors. Mm-hmm. It's all well researched. So when it comes to biohacking, a great place for people to start, especially if they're noticing that their energy is off, they're not quite feeling right, they're having trouble focusing during the day, or they have anxiety or even depression, is get yourself to a functional doctor and validate how you feel through scientific means. So don't...
I mean, are there tests that people, that they can do?
So the certain tests that I'd recommend is, first of all, check the nutritional panels. Are there any nutritional deficiencies? Okay. It's well reported that low vitamin D is linked to depression and anxiety. Low magnesium is linked to depression, as well as a sense of apathy. So apathy is simply not caring anymore. And once you get that baseline, the other tests that you might want to look at are for thyroid function, if your thyroid isn't functioning as it should, as well as food sensitivities. Now, food sensitivities is one of those areas where a lot more research needs to be done, but there is about to be one of the biggest research studies done here in the US around how food sensitivities impact not just your mental health, but also hormones and other digestive issues. And they're some of the factors that not a lot of people tend to look at. They'll immediately think, oh, I just got to get up off the couch and just quit making excuses and do it. Well, for a large percentage of the population, as we can see in surveying over 21,000 people, that's not the case. Right. And we need to treat each individual very differently, because biochemistry is as unique as a fingerprint. For example, some people, a peanut is a healthy snack. For others, it could cost them their life. Yeah. For some people, coconut, for example, is a healthy substitute for other oils. For me personally, it is a major food sensitivity for me that triggers inflammation in my body and my brain. So it will knock me out for about 4 to 5 days. And that, funnily enough, that was one of the triggers that I never even considered in my entire life. And that was one of the factors that started contributing to my downfall. And it wasn't until I took a food sensitivity blood test that I uncovered it, removed it from my diet for a while to see how I felt. I started improving. And then a while later, I accidentally had a Thai curry, not thinking coconut milk was in it. Ooh. 4 to 5 days of feeling tired. I felt angry. I constantly wanted to sleep. And it's really important. People don't tend to look at how food impacts psychological health. There is one case study that I share in the book of a woman by the name of Ruth Wallen, and she has a phenomenal book that's available on Amazon, and it talks about how she was admitted to a psychiatric ward with bipolar disorder, depression, psychosis. None of the doctors could work it out. Thankfully, one doctor came along and they realized that she was highly allergic to caffeine. Once they eliminated caffeine from her diet, her symptoms alleviated. Now, that's not to say everyone's allergic to caffeine, but it is to say that we're all different. What's healthy for you may not be healthy for me, and vice versa. So instead of going down the same old route, hey, you stop making excuses, maybe there is actually inflammation within your body that's contributing to these behavioral changes that you're not aware of.
I mean, and you're a great case in point there, right? You were exercising 6 days a week and physically great, right?
So, yeah. I was doing everything that a doctor should tell me to do. I was doing daily visualizations, which were becoming extremely hard because I couldn't really focus in on any one point at that time. I was still working out, I was still reading, but I was only able to work for 2 to 3 hours in the morning, focus before all the symptoms ramped up in the afternoon, and then I'd be wiped out. And people can even go to my YouTube channel and watch videos from 3 to 4 years ago. You'll actually notice a few things. My voice is very different. The other thing you may notice is that to record those weekly videos, I actually had to slow down the teleprompter because I couldn't keep up with it. I would slow it down. Then in editing, I would speed myself up so I sounded normal.
Wow.
Which is crazy. But it's some of the things like it, and we each have to understand that how you behaved as a depressed person, I behave are two very different things, but also based on our upbringing. So I was able to just focus on the things that the must-have things to get done so I could keep income coming in while I was dealing with this. But some people, they might find themselves completely and utterly bedridden. But the other side is we see celebrities all the time working their butts off, constantly doing media appearances, and then suddenly you hear bad news that they've taken their own life. Everyone thought that they were fine. Yeah. And we have to be respectful of how each other responds to depression, how we behave, because it's so multifaceted. It isn't just one single factor. In my case, there were probably 7 different factors at play that were all linked to each other ultimately.
I mean, I'd also say too, it changes with age, because I know I've developed like some food allergies later in life. I didn't have any that I knew of growing up, but yeah. You know, when you turn 30 and 40, things change in your body, right? And so you have to keep up with it. You have to.
And that's a good note. The other thing that with the change of age, it also may be connected to travel, because my symptoms flared up after 3 months of travel. And I kind of started with this theory, and with the whole book, I had a lot of theories. I had to go out and prove them right or wrong, speaking to the doctors and looking at the clinical studies. And I did have one theory that my gut microbiome had changed after that travel that may be connected to my mental health. So I took a fecal sample. Sounds really sexy. Didn't think you're going to talk about that on here. So you can actually provide a fecal sample. There's a company in the US here called Thrive, Thryve. It's just thrive.com. You send the sample off. They will do an analysis of the sample and actually provide you with a report of the breakdown of the bacteria in your digestive tract. Now, one thing that occurs with travel is you start being exposed to a ton of different bacteria that you may never have been exposed to in your entire lifetime, which can throw your internal system into chaos. Mm-hmm. One thing that I uncovered with my own result is that I had next to no bacteroids. And in recent research in the last couple of months, they have linked low to zero bacteroids to individuals suffering with depression.
Okay.
And obviously there needs to be a lot more research done around it. But we need to recognize that the gut microbiome is basically the weight of the human brain. It's basically a living organism that's constantly moving and changing. And we certainly here in the US see all of this influx of symptoms of IBS and other stomach disorders.
Right.
Oh, you can walk into a CVS here and you have a full aisle of different antacids. Back in Australia, that aisle might be just designated to a small little section. Now, that certainly comes back to the diet here in the US. Also, the fact that there are certain additives that are banned in the UK and Australia that are found commonly in food here.
Yeah. Yeah. And we could spend a whole program talking about that, because I think the way we eat in the US is, well, you look at our health, right? And that tells you right there what.
Yeah. Especially as we're preparing for the hurricane, we had to do a big shop yesterday, and I'm looking at other people's trolleys and they're just loading up with, they're not even putting that much water in it. It's Coca-Cola, or it's Sprite, it's Doritos, it's like chocolate. Like, this is an excuse for you to binge for the next 7 days. Yeah. There are some healthier options. It does take a little bit more thought, but there are healthier options.
Apples last that long, you know. Yeah. I mean, there are some things that can stay unrefrigerated and not. Yeah. So why did you end up writing Unstoppable? So you went on this. Tell us about the journey a little bit, and then and then go into why you wrote Unstoppable and what you want to accomplish. How you want to help people with it.
Yeah, I decided, I've revealed quite a lot of personal stories in my previous book, and I find it personally quite cathartic to share and work through this in the written process. It's kind of my psychological process to work through things. There are a couple of factors involved. First of all, I wanted to get to the root cause, but I wanted to share the information I found with others who are struggling, because I had been going to doctors and speaking to as many people and not getting answers. And I certainly knew that I wasn't the only one. Another part of that is I wanted to refocus my business around this area. And one of the reasons was I kind of had to a degree, because I had a limited amount of focus per day. And I'd always been interested in self-help, so it was a natural evolution for me. Another factor that came into play, actually signing a book proposal to say that you're going to go on this mission to get healthy, has an extreme amount of accountability that you would never believe.
Amen. Amen to that.
And look, it was in the first 30 days of doing it was really rough. Like, my depression escalated as I started making dietary changes to fix certain gut health issues. And there were multiple times where I simply wanted to give up, but it's that nagging thing in the head. And this is the farm boy in me, which is, if you're going to say something, if you're going to do something, you got to do it. And you made a commitment, you have to make that commitment. And I think that's what really kept me going when I wanted to quit multiple times. But as the journey progressed, and just to be clear, there were many months of planning before the 90 days kicked off. And that was like in a couple of hours of focus I had each day to start researching. And I've had a lot of help on this project as well. I certainly couldn't have done it alone. But it was an extraordinarily hard journey to go on. There's no question about that. But it's been rewarding. The book's blown up. We get messages every single week from people. There was one the other day, had been suicidal most of his adult life with 3 young kids, beautiful wife. He messaged us saying he was really desperate for answers. He worked through the book and even our online program. And for the first time in his life, he actually worked out why he had these symptoms after going to countless doctors. And it's those kind of stories that they make me light up. and want to get it out to more people. And we've had these stories all over the world, which is humbling. We've also had doctors, psychiatrists, clinical social workers, nutritionists recommending the book to their patients, which is just, I couldn't have hoped for anything better.
Yeah, no, that's got to be very gratifying to know that it's changing people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talk a little bit about the hustle or die culture. You think that's why everybody's depressed and hates their job and is really unsatisfied? I mean, what do we do to sort of change that, you think?
I think it's part of one of many different problems. The hustle and die culture, we especially see it in the Asian cultures where they're working themselves into an early grave. They're just pushing, whether that's for personal gratification or for acceptance from others. Also, with the influx of social media, everything is moving a lot faster, which builds up that anxiety that we have to do more, we have to be more, and we have to be better, especially if you're looking at the glamorized photos on social media and Instagram, comparing yourself to others. So I certainly think that's one factor. I think that there are a lot of environmental factors that are coming into play, because you can be a healthy peak performer, hustling, do really well, and not experience depression, anxiety, and stress. But if we look at one key factor, coming back to nutrition, nutritional deficiencies are certainly on the rise. Depression, suicide are all on the rise. So we have to ask ourselves, why is that occurring? Well, one factor is that studies in Canada and the US have found that due to changes in farming practices, our soil is becoming depleted in essential minerals such as magnesium. So to get the same amount of magnesium that we got in our diet over 50 years ago, we would have to eat 3 to 5 times the amount to get that same amount of magnesium, which is especially helpful for brain health. And it's looking at these other environmental factors to understand it's not just on an individual basis. This is happening globally. And also climate change. There was one really interesting study, and quite alarming, that there certainly needs to be a spotlight put on it, which found that the increase in carbon dioxide grew a certain type of algae like 5 times faster than what it would normally grow. But the bacteria that was feeding off of this algae suddenly started dying. And they asked the question, well, why is it dying? Because the food seemed plentiful. And it was because the nutrient quality kept dropping, even though the algae was growing larger. And typically the advice from doctors, and don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing doctors here, they're fantastic, but there's certain things that need to be updated based on the latest research. Typically we're getting advice, eating a balanced diet should be enough. The research doesn't support that any longer whatsoever. So some supplementation may need to be included to ensure that someone doesn't have brain fog or depression. Now, it's these nutritional deficiencies. It's also the toxins in the air, in the food, in our water that are having behavioral changes. There is one alarming study that I came across. Young teenagers living near a highway exhibited more aggressive behavior because they were being exposed to toxins from the freeway. Now, if we look at major city populations, I believe there was another study that came out only about a week ago confirming that original study too. But if we look at these major populations, our kids are growing up in highly polluted cities, and we do have to question, what are these toxins doing, not just to the brain health, but to the mental health and the behavior? And I think across the board, it's a lot of different factors in that culture, because if we look at symptoms, if your symptoms are severe, you get medicated. If they're mild, you get told it's all in your head, toughen up, get on with it.
That's right.
But it may be the exact same cause. It's the exact same cause. And that was certainly my case. It's like, you just need to toughen up. It's like, I can't medicate with self-help here. These are medical problems that need a different approach. And one of the major factors is also side effects from medication. And I believe, don't quote me correctly on this, but I think it's over 60% of the US population are on one or more medications.
I think I've heard, yeah, something similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's side effects from medication, suicidal thoughts. Now, when you think about how does a medication trigger a particular thought process? And what are the other medications doing to us as well? So one of the starting points, if people are suffering, you need to do a complete stock over everything that's going on in your life. Are you exposed to toxins? Are you not getting the nutritional content you need? Do you have side effects from medication? A close friend of mine had to go on hypertension medication. He put on over 60 pounds in 6 months and became depressed.
And probably a host of other medical conditions.
Swelling in the legs, the whole lot, his entire behavior changed. And we got him from, we took his lab results from a standard GP to a functional doctor. So a functional doctor looks at the body holistically and connects everything. The functional doctor uncovered a few other results in the lab work, and he was able to get off certain medication. His weight's come down. He's certainly not depressed like he was. But you think something as simple as taking a pill can have such a huge impact on how you behave during the day. And let me be clear, that's certainly not to say ditch your medications, but take your medications to a functional doctor, get a full assessment done, and checkups should be done routinely.
Right, and you know, that's amazing to me, because it seems to me we just treat symptoms and we're not looking at, in general, looking at the whole body, right, and what that's going to how that's going to impact. You know, maybe there could have been other solutions to him, right? Diet, some other things that he could have done, as opposed to just the easy thing, taking a pill.
Yeah, and there's, on the flip side of that as well, I came across a clinical social worker, a good friend of mine. She actually had this patient for over 5 years who'd been on and off with suicidal thoughts. The patient, while I was actually writing the book, had gone and had different lab tests done. They uncovered she had minute traces of vitamin D in her system. She started supplementing. Within a week, those behavioral symptoms started leaving. And within a couple of months, she'd reconnected with family and friends. She'd changed jobs. She started her own business. She felt like a completely new person. So in that process, they were doing all of this psychological work, but the brain couldn't process psychological work because it's not able to think clearly. The memory, the rationalization, the emotional control wasn't in play. So once that was alleviated, then all of that psychological work, it either diminishes or it becomes really, really effective. But to be clear, depression and anxiety and stress is unique to each individual, but they are some kind of avenues that people should consider if they're not getting results.
Right. What is, in the book you mentioned 7 triggers that sort of blunt our brain and sort of destroy our productivity. What are those triggers?
Yep. So the first one we've covered, which is the food sensitivities. The second one is inflammation. Now, inflammation can be triggered by different means. It could be, in fact, triggered by a food sensitivity. It could be triggered by medications. It can also be triggered by psychological stress. Okay. So it's one coin, 2 sides. So one's psychology and one's a biochemistry. We want to look at both of those same sides. The third one, which we've covered, side effects from medication. We've also nutritional deficiencies, digestion, which is a massive one. One thing that people should check out if they are having major digestive issues, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, maybe they don't actually need an antacid. Maybe they don't have enough stomach acid in the first instance. So there's not enough stomach acid in the body to actually break down that food, process it, and absorb the nutrients. And that is one thing that I encourage people to check out, because digestive issues is such a big deal here in this country. It's unbelievable. You don't see it in some other countries to the degree it is here. Right. But we have to be really aware of how these digestive issues affect us. The digestive system uses an enormous amount of energy every single day to process our food. Now, if that's using too much energy, it's going to be taking energy away from your mental cognition, your focus, and every other aspect of your life. So it's certainly one thing that I encourage people to look at. The other one, 6, hormones. And it's not something that a lot of people really think about when it comes to depression or anxiety or even stress, but when our body enters a state of fight or flight, our cortisol levels, the stress hormone, goes through the roof. This plays havoc on all of the systems within our body, especially our hormones. So I would encourage both men and women to go to a doctor, get their hormones tested. Are they depleted? Are the hormones too elevated? Because you could get symptoms at either side of that particular range. And the final one is also seasonal allergies, which has also been linked to depression and anxiety. But one thing I want people to make sure that they do is when they go to either their GP or a functional doctor, you want to ask this question when you get your lab results back. If they say that everything is normal, ask them, are my results at the top of the normal range or at the bottom of the normal range? Because a while back I got a little bit concerned. I spoke to a medical advisor and Dr. Mara Francis of Everlywell, who do lab test kits across the US. They're absolutely incredible. And I asked the question, how are these normal ranges defined? Because how are you comparing my normal results to that of a 70-year-old male or a 20-year-old male? And she said, well, typically the medical guinea pig has been the white 30-year-old 70-kilogram male. Now, if most of the population doesn't make up that demographic, just to be clear. So if a female, she's looking at the lab results for, say, vitamin D deficiency or magnesium or the vitamin Bs, then is she accurately being compared to a person in her age range, of her gender, of her nationality? And we see it in the African American community. They're more likely to have vitamin D deficiencies than anyone else. So who are they actually being compared to? Right. So we have a long way to go. And thankfully, the guinea pigs are changing, certainly around pregnancy for women. But it's an important question to ask, because you could be at the bottom of the normal range, but still be exhibiting symptoms because you don't meet that guinea pig.
Right. I mean, I'm a 50-year-old man. I'm going to be different than a 30-year-old, right? Yeah. But if I've got some deficiency somewhere, it's going to have an impact.
Exactly. And it's one thing also here in the US, if people are having thyroid tests and they're coming back as normal, they need to understand that a GP here in the US will typically recommend one thyroid test because it's covered by your insurance. Well, there is another thyroid test that will pick up different factors that the first one doesn't. Mm-hmm. So if the first thyroid test comes back as normal, then the second one may actually pick up some abnormalities because it's checking for different things. Because, you know, these problems, they're also systemic. They're not on an individual basis. We're asking the right questions, but sometimes of the wrong people.
Right. And if you're in a normal range, I would imagine the doctor's not going to want to give you supplements or give you or recommend certain things. Is that right?
Yeah. So with a functional doctor, they'll look at the normal range, say, okay, you're at the bottom of the normal range. Let's look at supplementation or dietary changes or health lifestyle changes that can boost you up now as preventative care. Because a GP will just say, right, you're normal, next.
You're good.
Because they might only get 10, 15 people. And that's a systemic problem. That's certainly not against the doctors. But they may be on the verge of bigger issues if their symptoms are becoming elevated. It's about going, okay, you're in the normal range. Maybe this is why. We focus in on here. We get to the root cause and we address the cause, not just the symptom.
Okay. And I mean, so literally you need to look up and see a function, what they call, it's called a functional doc. I hadn't heard this before. So until I read it, but so it's functional doctor.
Yes, functional doctor. So they very much look at the body holistically. A typical GP will go, all right, there's something wrong with your brain, we'll send you to a brain health expert. There's something wrong with your gut, we'll send you to an expert in that. A functional doctor is going to look at how everything is interconnected.
Okay. And you don't need a recommendation or I mean, you can just make an appointment. It's okay. You don't have to get some sort of consult or some sort of recommendation from your general.
So functional doctors, it depends on each one individually, but some may spend 30 minutes to a full hour with you instead of 5 to 10 minutes, because it's almost near impossible to accurately diagnose a problem within 5 to 10 minutes.
And I can go to them and they can order the test, the ones I need.
Yep.
Okay.
They're doctors like everyone else. There is the Functional Doctor Society within the US too, and we've had so many people come back to us after reading the book, after they've been to a functional doctor. We had a woman the other day message us and said that she has no testosterone in her system, which causes chaos for women as well. And she's been on the hunt for answers for ages, but she basically said, I'm getting this testosterone test done. You will do it for me. And that's what they came back at. So it's really, the book's really helping people be the advocate of their own health, stepping up and saying, no, I'm the patient. I actually want to take this test done. If it comes back as nothing, that's fine. But I want to rule everything out or in.
Right. Well, hopefully maybe they can help me with my ADD. So,
okay.
How do you, are there some tips that we can, that you have for helping us increase productivity and reduce stress, aside from, taking this huge first step to me, which is going to a functional doctor and figuring out, the best diet, the best supplements, those things that are really, really important. But what's after that? What else can we do to sort of increase our productivity and reduce the stress? Because I think we're all living with huge amounts of stress.
Well, there's one basic first step, and it's free. We've completed this online quiz on our website. Mm-hmm. So if people just go to areyouunstoppable.com, what it's going to do is it's going to ask you 30 different questions and give you the results of 1 of 4 different identity types. Okay. Now, these identity types are based on not just your biological energy, but also your psychological energy too. And what we find is we're really no different to a mobile phone, which we're going to love to hate. But if you think about it, we pick up our phone in the morning. It's typically been on the charger all night, so it's good, ready to go, all the tasks performing, watch video, play games, do whatever. But as the day goes on and it's 5 or 6 in the afternoon, the battery becomes flat. And what might in fact switch on is the power saving mode. Now, when the power saving mode comes on, all of those background tasks start turning off. So you can't necessarily play games or watch videos without completely becoming depleted. And we're really no different in the fact, if we look at our own energy levels and get people to a picture of a battery, so 0 to 100%. So the peak performers, their energetic charge is 75 to 100%. So we call these the catalysts. So they've got their mental, their cognitive function, they can focus, they're highly productive. We want people to become these. Now, through the survey of over 21,000, we find that only 6.75% of the population is an actual catalyst. So a very tiny portion of the population. Beneath that, when our energy starts to dip, 50 to 75%, we have synergists. So they're kind of on the cusp of going up or falling back down. Their energy might be great some days their focus might be incredible, but then they might have an off week. But when we get below the 50% threshold for peak performance, just like the power saving mode on our phone, our primal mind turns on what's called self-preservation mode, which is where it has to prioritize vital bodily functions over ambitious goals, because it's trying to keep you alive. So below the 50%, we have the guardians and then the defenders. So the Guardians, they've got the brain fog, digestive issues. They may have depressive symptoms, anxiety. They certainly can't focus. They're most likely procrastinating. And then the Defenders, they're about 5% of people. They're the ones that need to go to a functional doctor or a psychologist immediately, because they're high-risk individuals that they need that immediate assistance straight away. Mm-hmm. But what happens is when self-preservation mode comes on, I want people to imagine you're driving along a road, you get to a T-junction, you actually want to make a right turn, because turning right is where your goals are, all the activities that you need to do to complete, your soul's purpose. This is where it'll light you up. When self-preservation mode comes on, you get to the T-junction and your primal brain is saying, make a left turn because you need to rest and recover. You don't have enough energy to do this. You only have enough energy for these vital bodily functions. And this is where people feel really incongruent and they start fighting against themselves, especially when it comes to focus. Mm-hmm. So they get to this and they feel like two completely different people. They know what they've got to do. They know they're capable of doing it, but for some reason in the background, those background tasks have been switched off. Their ass literally ends up on the couch and they're wondering why. And it's not that there's anything innately wrong with you. It's because you're energetically depleted. And this is what I call an energy deficit. So the difference with the energy deficit is the difference between how much energy you actually have versus how much energy you actually need to complete those goals and to remain focused. And this is where I do recommend to people trialing different nootropics. So a nootropic is a natural supplement that assists with mental cognition. And there is one here, and just a heads up, I'm not associated with this brand whatsoever.
No, that's good.
This is called L-tyrosine. So L-tyrosine is a non-essential amino acid that is critical for mental cognition. Okay. And the military has actually studied this as well. It's found in chicken, it's found in turkey, but what they found is that when you take this certainly helps with stress, focus, productivity, the whole lot. This is something that I take on a daily basis. With any type of nootropic like this, you want to have a break every now and then because your body does want to return to a state of homeostasis. So when you initially take it, you'll feel that boost of energy and clarity. After a while, that will slide back down. Have a break, then start it again. And another one.
A drink, or is it you put it in the meal, or?
Yeah, so this particular one, this one's a powder, but you can also get it in tablet form. It's advisable to have it on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, and I typically do it before gym. One thing, I think you're going to love this one, Rhett. This is one of my favorites. So this is L-theanine, which is also an amino acid. Now, L-theanine relaxes without sedation. So it's not going to put you into sleep, but it's going to relax, calm the fight or flight. And the research that's been done on this is that they've found that it produces alpha waves in the brain within 30 minutes of consumption. Now, L-tyrosine and L-theanine right here are the two supplements I took most when I was actually writing the book. And they're the two supplements that help me get enough energy to kind of get me back into my rational thinking so I can troubleshoot everything. And I have heard of others using these same supplements, but check for your healthcare provider if there's any other medications they may interact with before you trial anything. Right. But these are the two that, I mean, for the book, I had to write over 100,000 word draft in 4 months. So I had to have my brain back and be healthy by the time I could actually do that. And there's some things natural that can help.
Okay. That's all really, really, really interesting and good to know. But you would definitely consult the doctor before you start taking any of those, and have those tests done and figure out what you need, right?
Yeah, instead of starting randomly taking supplements. And I want to make it clear, please validate through scientific means how you're feeling. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just, it's going to take too long to uncover the issue.
How did you, what I'm really fascinated about is, you've sort of linked your, I don't want to say biochemistry, I guess is the word, and your soul's purpose. That's remarkable, right? I mean, how did you want to talk about that a little bit, or can you?
Yeah,
Is that even a thing? Is that?
yeah.
I mean,
I think, well, I guess that came up through the book because I've been depressed on and off throughout my entire lifetime, and there are certain times in my life where you could say without a question it was caused by psychological trauma. For example, over 10 years ago, my dad passed away from a tumor. So the depression that followed that was clearly psychological, but this time it was all very different to me because I was focused, I was enjoying what I was doing, but all the symptoms started kicking in. I just couldn't work out why. And that's where I kind of thought, you know, we look at all the psychological stuff, we look at a peak performer and go, all right, what time do they get up? What does their schedule look like? How much sleep do they get? But we never go and say, maybe we should actually do a scientific study, take blood tests of all of these people, do gut health tests, assess their diet, see if they're biochemically balanced on every point. And I would love for one of these research projects to be done. I don't think it'll ever happen, to be honest. It's too complex. But we never assess those other underlying factors. And for me, the biochemistry and aligning with the soul's purpose, if you don't have enough energy to fulfill your soul's purpose, it's simply never going to be fulfilled. It's going to be one of those dreams that you just hope's going to happen, but you eventually give up on because you have that energy deficit between how much energy you've got and how much energy it really takes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in business are in that situation. They might be a startup, they're fully passionate, good to go out of the gate, but then after a while, the chronic stress kicks in because obviously financial issues, but they don't look after the biological side of things.
Right.
So that continually gets depleted. And when that gets depleted, that's when people typically apply more willpower to get through. And applying willpower in that situation is like putting your foot to the pedal in the car, accelerating as fast as you can, but someone's just pulled on the handbrake, the tires are just spinning.
Yeah.
And one other supplement I would recommend to people, especially entrepreneurs or whoever's under chronic stress, is actually called ashwagandha.
Okay.
Ashwagandha has been found in clinical studies to reduce cortisol levels by up to 30%. Now, that's a significant reduction. We've just had someone just a couple of days, high levels of stress with a change of job. They started taking within 2 weeks. They're finally feeling normal again, like they can actually tackle it on. And this individual is very much in fight or flight mode. And in fight or flight, you just lose access to your prefrontal cortex, the emotional control, rational thinking. So you can't rationalize what the actual problem is. So it makes it really hard to solve it.
Yeah. What is the rising cortisol level? What is that? I mean, what's the long-term impact on that of your body to your body?
Particularly hormonal issues. So
Okay.
that could be a drop in testosterone for some people. Could be incredibly chaotic for women too. But we need to look at what cortisol does to, say, for example, our sleep.
Okay.
Sleep is one of the fundamentals that people need to get right as a base. Many people, if they are finding at the end of the day, they're getting into that fight or flight, they've got the negative looping thoughts they can't switch off. That's potentially because the fight or flight has kicked into gear and the cortisol levels are elevating. So ashwagandha, through high pressure times, when we launched the book, I was working 12 to 14 hours a day. So I was keeping on track of all my nutritional needs, but I was also taking ashwagandha an hour before bed to try and reduce cortisol before bed, and first thing in the morning as well. And I find that it just takes the edge off.
Okay. And are there any recommendations for sleep? I mean, because I know that's another huge problem that we have, and are there some things that we can do better there?
Yeah, I think one thing, first of all, to really make any changes, you need to know what's going on. So this little ring here is called the Aura Ring, and there are other wearable devices that track sleep accurately.
Okay.
This one's one of the most accurate on the market, so just Aura Ring. I uncovered I was only getting 5 to 10 minutes of deep sleep per night, now where it should be an hour to 2 hours. Now, if people aren't getting deep sleep, it means the part of the brain that activates, that releases toxins during the deep sleep phase isn't being activated. So toxins can build up, which also is implicated in inflammation and, of course, depression. Mm-hmm. So the first step is to really track your sleep accurately to see what your patterns are. Go to bed at the same time each night. Make sure the temperature is 71 or below. Another one, which is kind of an unusual one, but is binaural beats or pink noise. Okay. So the studies in this area show that our brain, when we're listening to binaural beats, our brain starts to sync to them. And of course, there are different binaural beats for different brain waves, especially delta and deep sleep. So people could listen to pink noise. That's been shown to increase the length of deep sleep. For people that want to go way out there kind of thing, there are these devices, okay. which is pretty cool. It's a wearable device you stick on your head. It's light therapy. It uses binaural beats as well as NLP. So the lights also flash here. I've been using it recently to increase my deep sleep because my brain was trying to enter the deep sleep phase at 10 a.m. and then 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So wow. I use this device, blue light therapy, to wake up the brain, different binaural beats, to kind of resync my circadian rhythm. So there's a myriad of different things, but I think tracking is one of the most fundamental ones that people really need to start with.
What does the tracking tell you? I mean, aside from, okay, I'm not getting enough deep sleep. What health, and do you sync it? I mean, is it something? I've got my Apple Watch here. I hate wearing it at night because I sleep on my arm, so I can't. But yeah, and you give that to a doctor that can tell you good, bad.
Yeah, I actually showed mine to a doctor the other day, and some doctors will look at it, some won't be able to consider it. The Aura Ring, they have compared it to other sleep studies, and I think it's about 95% accuracy, so the doctor did take it seriously. But other factors you can actually look at is with the Aura Ring, it gives you a readiness score. So this is based on your body temperature, how much sleep you've got, the phases of sleep, your activity during the day. It'll give you a score out of 100 to say, today you should push yourself because you're well rested, you're recovered, you're repaired. Or today you actually need to back off because your heart rate variability was too low. You didn't recover from a workout from the day before. Okay. So one factor, the heart rate variability, that's certainly connected to the longevity of life. And with this actual device, you can, if I pull it up, you can get trends to see how it's trending over time. I'm not sure. So you can see that there are certain spikes. The good thing with using a device like this is you can look back and say, oh, actually taking the ashwagandha, on that day, I did notice a spike in deep sleep in the coming weeks. So write that down. So you're able to actually test some of the nootropics that you're taking to make sure they're not maybe elevating your heart too much, or you're maybe having too much caffeine. So you're able to sync with what you think you feel with what the actual results are. And this has saved me a few times. My temperature has spiked massively. I've seen it on the ring. I've started supplements to help with inflammation and the immune system. And a cold or a flu will typically only last maybe 24 hours, and then I'm back to health. But I wouldn't know that because the symptoms creep up on you slowly. But when you see your temperature's elevated, you can take immediate action. It puts you in control.
And where do you get the ring if you want?
Yeah, so it's just the Aura Ring, so O-U-R-A.
Okay.
Ring, auraring.com, I think it is.
And you just wear it at night?
Yep. it's pretty, I'm not really a ring person, but it's a lightweight ring, and they're getting smaller and smaller. The battery lasts, I think, 3 or 5 days.
Nice.
But it's really good. I wake up in the morning, I kind of check in with myself, how am I feeling? Then I'll actually look at the results on the Aura Ring, and then you kind of can put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I got so many more questions, but we're creeping up on an hour, and you have a hurricane that you're looking at out the window.
We'll be fine.
Yes, you will. You got good karma, man. You got enough karma in the bank there. You're good.
I got so many supplements and devices to help with anxiety and stress. It's not funny. This is when you put it all into practice.
Well, I'm going to look. I do want to thank people for joining us today. We've got a couple comments there. But anyway, thank you so much, Ben, for sharing all this with us. We'll have to do this again because I'm sure you're going to probably come out with another book, and there's going to be another time we need to talk about that. And but thank you so much. Thank you for spending your time with us today here on the Power Lunch. If you want us to come to a conference or your event and broadcast live, we are happy to do that. Let's see if we can make that happen. Get in touch with us through the website, which is powerlunch.live, powerlunch.live. You can also, on that site, check out our upcoming schedule. Got some great people coming up next week. Got a great shows for you. So tune in. Lunchtime, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week at 12 noon. Have a great holiday in the U.S. This is a holiday weekend coming up. So be safe. And again, thank you for having and spending some time with us today. Ben, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, guys. Have a good weekend.